Hi everybody, and welcome back to another true crime video. So if you are new here, thank you for clicking on this video. My name is Chelsea, and I'm so happy to have each and every one of you here with me for this video. So normally when I make true crime videos, I will do a ton of research before I make the video, and then I will just tell you the story. Well, today I thought that I could just actually read you the story so that I can make sure I get all the facts and you get the best true crime story that you can, so that I don't leave any information out. So this is actually a requested video from one of you guys when I asked in the community tab of what true crime story you wanted to hear about, and this story is about Harold Shipman, or Fred Shipman. He was a serial killer in England. He was a doctor and he killed over 250 of his patients. So I want to tell y'all that story and all the details about it. So without further ado, let's get started. So, Harold Shipman was a British serial killer, and he attended Leeds School of Medicine. He began being a physician in 1970, and to start out with his early life, he was born as the middle child in a working class family on January 14th, 1946, and his biological name is Harold Frederick Shipman, also known as Fred. He was the favorite child of his domineering mother, Vera. She instilled in him an early sense of superiority that tainted most of his later relationships, leaving him an isolated adolescent with few friends. When his mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer, lung cancer, he willingly oversaw her care as she declined. Fascinated by the positive effect that the administration of morphine had on her suffering until she succumbed to the disease on June 21st, 1963. Devastated by her death, he was determined to go to medical school, and he was admitted to Leeds University Medical School for training for 2 years. Oh, sorry, read that wrong. Medical school for training 2 years later, having failed his entrance exams the first time before serving his hospital internship. Still a loner, he met his future wife, Primrose, at the age of 19, and they were married when she was 17. And 5 months later, she was pregnant with their first child. By 1974, he was a father of 2 and had joined a medical practice in Todmorden, I think that's how you say that, in Yorkshire. Sorry if I butcher these, where he initially thrived as a family practitioner before allegedly becoming addicted to the painkiller Petidine. I think that's how you say it. It's P-E-T-H-I-D-I-N-E. He forged prescriptions for large amounts of the drug, and he was forced to leave the practice when caught by his medical colleagues in 1975, at which time he entered a drug rehab program. In the subsequent inquiry, he received a small fine and a conviction for forgery. A few years later, Shipman was accepted onto the staff at Donnybrook Medical Center in Hyde, where he ingratiated himself as a hard-working doctor who enjoyed the trust of patients and colleagues alike, although he had a reputation for arrogance among the junior staff. He remained on staff there for almost 2 decades, and his behavior incurred only minor interest from other healthcare professionals. The local undertaker noticed that Dr. Shipman's patients seemed to be dying at an unusually high rate and exhibited similar poses in death. Most were fully clothed and usually sitting up or reclining on a settee or a seat. I'm guessing that's what that means. He was concerned enough to approach Shipman about this directly, who reassured him that there was nothing to be concerned about. I'd be concerned. Later, another medical colleague, Dr. Susan Booth, also found the similarity disturbing, and the local coroner's office was alerted, who then contacted the police. A covert investigation followed, but Shipman was cleared. As he appeared that his records were in order, the inquiry failed to contact the General Medical Council or check criminal records, which would have yielded evidence of Shipman's previous record. Later, a more thorough investigation revealed that Shipman altered the medical records of his patients to corroborate their causes of death. Hiding behind his status as a caring family doctor, it is almost impossible to establish exactly when Shipman began his killing of his patients, or indeed exactly how many died in his hands, and his denial of all charges did nothing to assist the authorities. Indeed, his killing spree was only brought to an end thanks to the determination of Angela Woodruff, the daughter of one of his victims, who refused to accept the explanations given for her mother's death. Kathleen Grundy, an active, wealthy 81-year-old widow, was found dead in her home on June 24, 1998, following an earlier visit by Shipman. Woodruff was advised by Shipman that an autopsy was not required, and Grundy was buried in accordance with her daughter's wishes. Woodruff was a lawyer and had always handled her mother's affairs, so it was with some surprise that she discovered that another will existed, leaving the bulk of her mother's estate in Dr. Shipman's hands. Woodruff was convinced the document was a forgery and that Shipman had murdered her mother, forging the will to benefit from her death. She alerted the local police, where Detective Superintendent Bernard Postles quickly came to the same conclusion upon examination of the evidence. Crazy. Grundy's body was exhumed, and a post-mortem revealed that she had died of an overdose on morphine, which was administered to her within 3 hours of her death, precisely within the time frame that Shipman was at her house. Shipman's home was raided, yielding medical records, an odd collection of jewelry, and an old typewriter which proved to be the instrument upon which Grundy's forged will had been produced. It was immediately apparent to the police from the medical records seized that the case would extend further than the single death in question, and priority was given to those deaths it would be most productive to investigate, namely victims who had not been cremated and who had died following a home visit by Shipman, which were given priority. Shipman had urged families to cremate their loved ones in a large number of cases, stressing that no further investigation of their deaths was necessary, even in instances where the relatives had died of causes previously unknown to their families. In situations where they did raise questions, Shipman would provide computerized medical notes that corroborated his death or cause of death pronouncements. Insane. Police later established that Shipman would, in most cases, alter these medical notes directly after killing the patient to ensure that his account matched the historical records. What Shipman had failed to grasp was that each alteration of the records would be time-stamped by the computer, enabling police to ascertain exactly which records had been altered. Following extensive investigations, which included numerous exhumations and autopsies, the police charged Shipman with 15 individual counts of murder on September 7th, 1998, as well as 1 count of forgery. Shipman's trial commenced in Preston Crown Court on October 5th, 1999. Attempts by his defense counsel to have Shipman tried in 3 separate phases, which are the cases with physical evidence, the cases without, and the cases without and the Grundy case where the forgery differentiated it from other cases, as well as to have damning evidence relating to Shipman's fraudulent accumulation of morphine and other drugs, were thrown out, and the trial proceeded on the 16 charges included in the indictment. The prosecution asserted that Shipman had killed the 15 patients because he enjoyed exercising control over life and death, and dismissed any claims that he had been acting compassionately, as one of his victims were suffering a terminal illness. Woodruff appeared as the first witness. Her forthright manner and account of her unremitting determination to get to the truth impressed the jury, and attempts by Shipman's defense to undermine her were largely unsuccessful, because she was a lawyer. Next, the government pathologist led the court through the gruesome post-mortem findings, where morphine toxicity was the cause of death in most of the cases. Thereafter, fingerprint analysis of the forged will showed that Grundy had never handled the will, and her signature was dismissed by a handwriting expert as a crude forgery. A police computer analyst then testified how Shipman had altered his computer records to create symptoms that his dead patients never even had, in most cases within hours of their death. As the trial progressed onto other victims and the accounts of their relatives, the pattern of Shipman's behavior became much clearer. A lack of compassion, disregard for the wishes of attending relatives, and reluctance to attempt to revive patients were bad enough, but another fraud also came to light. He would pretend to call the emergency services in the presence of the relatives, then cancel the call out when the patient was discovered to be dead. Telephone records showed that no actual calls were ever made. Finally, evidence of his drug hoarding was introduced, with false prescribing to patients who didn't require morphine, overprescribing to those who did, as well as proof of his visits to the homes of the recently deceased to collect up unused drug supplies for disposal. Shipman's haughty demeanor throughout the trial did nothing to assist his defense in painting a picture of a dedicated healthcare professional. Despite their attempts, his arrogance in constantly changing the story when caught out in obvious lies did nothing to endear him to the jury. Following a meticulous summation by the judge and a caution to the jury that no one had actually witnessed Shipman kill any of his patients, the jury were sufficiently convinced by the testimony and evidence presented and unanimously found Shipman guilty on all charges. 15 counts of murder, and 1 of forgery on the afternoon of January 31st, 2000. The judge passed 15 life sentences as well as a 4-year sentence for forgery, which he commuted to a whole life sentence, effectively removing any possibility of parole. Shipman was incarcerated at Durham Prison. The fact that a doctor had killed 15 patients sent a shudder through the medical community, but this was to prove insignificant in light of further investigations that delved more deeply into his patient case list history. A clinical audit conducted by Professor Richard Baker of the University of Leicester examined the number and pattern of deaths in Shipman's practice and compared them with other practitioners. It found that rates of death amongst his elderly patients were significantly higher, clustered at certain times of the day, and that Shipman was in attendance in a disproportionately high number of cases. The audit goes on to estimate that he may have been responsible for deaths of at least 236 patients over a 24-year period. Separately, an inquiry commission chaired by High Court Judge Dame Jeanette Smith examined the records of 500 patients who died while in Shipman's care, and the 2,000-page report concluded that it was likely that he had murdered at least 218 of his patients, although this number was offered by Dame Jeanette as an estimation rather than a precise calculation, as certain cases presented insufficient evidence to allow for certainty. The commission further speculated that Shipman might have been addicted to killing and was critical of police investigation procedures, claiming that the lack of experience of the investigating officers resulted in missed opportunities to bring Shipman to justice earlier. Agreed. He may, in fact, have taken his first victim within months of obtaining his license to practice medicine. 67-year-old Margaret Thompson, who died in March of 1971 while recovering from a stroke, but deaths prior to 1975 were never officially proven. Whatever the exact number, the sheer scale of his murderous activities meant that Shipman was catapulted from British patient killer to the most prolific known serial killer in the world. He remained at Durham Prison throughout these investigations, maintaining his innocence, and was staunchly defended by his wife Primrose and family. He was moved to Wakefield Prison in June of 2003, which made visits from his family much easier. On January 13, 2004, Shipman was discovered hanging in his prison cell at Wakefield, having used bedsheets to tie to the window bars of his cell. There remains some mystery about the whereabouts of his remains, with some claiming that his body is still in a Sheffield morgue, while others believe that his family have custody of his body, believing that he may have been murdered in his cell and wishing to delay his interment pending further tests. Crazy. I wanted to read this one because I felt like it was really important to target all of the different things and events that had happened, because like it said, he had been practicing medicine for over 24 years, and it's just crazy because it's like, how did he get away with killing that many people? I mean, I think it said 2,000, or not 2,000, so that's drastic, but that there was so many of them that had died compared to any other family practitioner. and it just makes you question, like, why weren't the families trying to figure this out? Or why weren't there more people that wanted the police to at least investigate this situation more? And that if the fact that he got away with this for so long is just heartbreaking to me, because so many of these people obviously could have lived so much longer, since most of them that he did kill did not have any underlying health issues besides whatever he was taking care of them for. So I thought this story was really heartbreaking, but it's also fascinating because I didn't even know about it until I'll put the person right here who mentioned it to me to talk about, but until that person told me about it, I didn't even know about this story. So I was really excited to share it with you guys and read about it, because like I said, it's really insane. Because I mean, you go to the doctor expecting them to have your best interest at heart and never thinking that they would do anything to put your life in jeopardy, but in this case, the guy was not looking out for the best interest of his patients. And something else I thought that was interesting when I was kind of like doing some research on this story was they were talking about that right after his mother had passed away, before he ended up going to medical school, was that obviously he had been taking care of her before she passed away, helping her with the doses of morphine. But that when he found out that his mother had passed away, he went to school the next day, met up with a friend, acted completely normal, and his friend was walking with him to school and asked, "What did you do this weekend?" And he was like, "Oh, my mother died." Like, as if it was like he did something fun, or just there was no expression on his face whatsoever. And the guy was like, "Well, are you okay? Like, what did you do after she passed away?" And he goes, "Oh, I went for a run at 2 a.m. in the morning." So it just makes you question, like, did he kill his mother? I don't know, but that could have been what stemmed him doing this to other people, was maybe he did kill her and get off on killing her. I don't know. There wasn't enough evidence to prove that he actually did take his mother's life, but it definitely makes you wonder if that's what really set off him wanting to kill people who were more in the elderly community or people who were sick. Who knows? But I thought this story was crazy. Wanted to share it with you guys, especially since I know so many of you have been waiting for me to do another true crime video. So if you like this where I just read it to you, I was thinking I could also do ones where I may do 2 stories at once if they're a little bit shorter, just to get more true crime stories out there and, you know, be able to share them with you guys. I know not all of you love true crime, but for those of you that do, let me know down in the comment section below if you would like to see more of these types of videos where I'm just reading it to you and possibly getting out 2 stories in one video. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.